So I just got a call from Temu. Not an email, not a DM, but a real person on Zoom trying to recruit me to sell on their platform. Now normally, I don't take calls like this, but here's what they promised me. 0 fees, 0 commissions, 0 upfront costs. They bring the traffic and sales, you just list your product, ship it yourself, and you keep every dollar. Now naturally, I was intrigued because it sounded too good to be true. And the more I listened, the more I realized that something didn't add up. Why would a company with a reputation of selling cheap products direct from China be approaching my US-based business? Why this sudden push to bring US sellers on board and this urgently? In this video, I'll expose the fine print Temu doesn't advertise publicly and what you really need to know before you join. Now, to understand why Temu is suddenly recruiting US sellers, you have to look at what changed on May 2nd. That's when President Trump announced the end of the de minimis exemption, a policy that allowed imported packages under $800 to enter the US without paying taxes. Now, for years, Temu, along with thousands of other Chinese-based sellers, relied on that loophole to flood the US market with ultra-cheap goods. And at its peak, the US was getting over 2 million de minimis packages per day, most of them coming straight from China. But with that one policy change, the entire pipeline collapsed. Now, every package, no matter how small, gets slapped with a 55% tariff or a flat $100 import fee. And that completely destroys the low-margin, high-volume model Temu was built on. And almost overnight, Temu's entire business started to collapse. In a scramble to cut losses, they slashed 80% of their advertising budget, and the app immediately dropped from the top of both the iPhone and Android charts. Within just a couple of weeks, they lost over half of their US users, tens of millions of people who stopped opening the app, stopped ordering, and never came back. App downloads fell by 73%. Weekly user activity dropped by 58%. And for a company built entirely on volume, these numbers were devastating. So Temu immediately pivoted. Instead of relying on shipments from China, they shifted their focus to US-based fulfillment, and that's where sellers like you and me come in. If you've got inventory in the United States, they want you on the platform. And their pitch sounds incredible. They're offering what sounds like the perfect setup. You keep and manage your own inventory, you handle the shipping, they bring in the traffic and sales, you get paid quickly, and they don't take a commission. Seriously, 0% commission. Compared to Amazon or Walmart, where fees can eat up 61% or more of every order, this sounds like a breath of fresh air. You also don't have to pay to list your products. There are no upfront platform costs. And you're not locked into their logistics network. You ship orders from your own warehouse or wherever you fulfill from right now. Now on the surface, it feels like they're handling sellers the keys to a system that puts them in full control, and they're framing it as a win-win. At least, that's how it sounded at first. But when I got on a call with one of their reps and started asking questions, that picture started to fall apart. Because while this may look like a golden opportunity on the surface, there's some very real gotchas buried beneath the fine print. So here's the part Temu doesn't advertise up front. They say you get to set your own price. And technically, that's true. But what they don't mention is that Temu sets the price the customer sees. Here's how it actually works. As a seller, you enter in your all-in payout. That's the amount you want to get paid for each order. It includes your product cost, your shipping, and whatever margin you're hoping to make. Then, Temu takes that number, looks at the competitor pricing, usually on Amazon or Walmart, and decides what price they'll actually list your product at on their site. They don't take a cut of your payout. Instead, they make money on the spread between what you ask for and what the customer pays. If you say, I need to make $40 per sale, and they decide to list it for $47, they keep the $7 difference. But here's the problem. If your payout is too high, even if it's justified, Temu won't just list it higher. They'll penalize your product by giving it a low visibility badge. And that means fewer impressions, fewer clicks, and virtually no traffic. So yes, you can set your price, but if Temu doesn't like their margins, your product gets buried. And that's where the power dynamic starts to shift. Let's talk about some of the other fine print next. On paper, Temu gives you full control over fulfillment. You ship the products yourself, you choose the carrier, you handle logistics. But what they don't highlight is how strict the delivery expectations actually are. Every order is expected to be delivered within 7 business days. Not shipped, delivered. And if you miss that window, even if it's the carrier's fault, Temu charges you a $5 penalty per item. By the way, if you're interested in learning how to start your own profitable online store, make sure you sign up for my free 6-day e-commerce mini course below. It's 100% free and I guarantee you'll learn a lot. And that's where things get tricky because lately, even the major carriers, UPS, FedEx, USPS, have become a lot less reliable. Delays are more common, tracking updates lag behind, and sellers are the ones left holding the bag when something goes wrong. Now, $5 might not sound like a lot, but remember, everything sold on Temu is cheap and low margin to begin with, so if you have multiple orders delayed by USPS, it adds up fast. Temu does offer to print their own shipping labels, and using them can make it easier to dispute penalties if something goes wrong. But let's be honest here. Do you really want to spend your time filing disputes every time a carrier screws up? You didn't sign up to become a full-time customer service rep for USPS. It's a complete waste of time and energy, especially when the margins are already thin. And then there's the issue of free shipping. Temu shows free shipping to customers on most orders, but you're the one paying for it. If the order total is over $30, the shipping cost is 100% on you. If it's under $30, the customer pays only $2.99 and you cover the rest. Now here's the reality. Nothing ships for $2.99 in the US. Even the cheapest shipping option for a 1-pound parcel typically costs at least $4.75 to $6.50 depending on the destination. So unless you've priced your products with those exact costs baked in, you're losing money on every single order. Which means that 0% commission pitch, it doesn't mean zero cost, it just shifts where those costs show up. And if you don't account for that from the beginning, it's very easy to start losing money even when you're making sales. And don't get me started on the returns. Temu has a 90-day return policy. That is 3 times longer than what most independent stores or marketplaces offer. And when a return comes in, you're on the hook for the return shipping, at least for the first time an item is sent back. If a customer returns a second item from the same order, Temu will cover that cost. But let's be real here. Most customers aren't sending back multiple items from the same order. That almost never happens. So in practice, you're eating the return shipping costs the vast majority of the time, whether the return is your fault or not. Once the item arrives at your warehouse, you have 2 days to inspect it. If it's damaged, used, or clearly a scam return, you can file a dispute. But that process takes time. And just like with late shipments, the burden of proof is entirely on you. Now what about reviews? Temu has reviews, but they don't work the same way they do on Amazon. You might think more 5-star ratings will help you rise in the rankings, but Temu doesn't prioritize products based on reviews. They prioritize the conversion rate. If your product converts well, meaning shoppers click and buy, it stays visible. If it doesn't, no amount of glowing reviews will save it. That sounds merit-based on paper, but it also means that one slow week of sales could tank your visibility, even if your product is solid. And then finally, there's the issue of customer data. You don't get anything. No email, no phone number, just a name and a shipping address, and even that might be partially masked depending on how it comes through the system. That means no follow-up marketing, no abandoned cart sequences, no customer retention. You're literally just a back-end fulfillment arm, not a real brand in the eyes of the buyer. So after all this, the pricing controls, the shipping penalties, the return costs, why are sellers still signing up? Well, it's simple. Temu brings traffic. Even with recent drops in user activity, they still have millions of people browsing the app daily. And for sellers with existing inventory sitting in a warehouse, that kind of exposure, especially on a new platform with less competition, can be tempting. There's also no upfront risk. You're not paying to list and you're not paying to advertise unless you choose to. That makes it an easy platform to test, especially for sellers who are already fulfilling orders in-house. And if you price carefully, pad in your shipping costs, and keep your fulfillment tight, it's possible to make it work, at least in the short term. Some sellers are also using Temu to offload stale or aging inventory just to get cash moving again. Others are experimenting with it like they would with a new TikTok shop or a niche marketplace, but not as a main sales channel, but as a backup or a test environment. But here's the catch. You can't treat Temu like your own store. It's not a brand building platform. you're not creating a long-term relationship with the customer. You're just a cog in their system, and the second your product stops converting, they'll bury it. And if you're also selling on Amazon at the same time, you need to be careful. Sellers have reported losing their buy box or even getting suspended when Amazon detects product overlap between your FBA listings and what you've got on Temu. So if you're thinking about testing it, go in with clear expectations. Temu might offer quick exposure, but it comes with trade-offs, and you need to understand those before you ever ship out your first order. Now that you understand how selling on Temu works, make sure you watch this video here on how the US government basically destroyed this platform.